The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Coming up a little bit later, Greg Wyshynski from the Yahoo Puck Daddy blog. We're going to talk a little NHL playoffs. But right now, I wanted to get him in. A guy who was at the Masters and a guy who should have been on the BS Report long before this. He's on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline right now from ESPN.com. Wright Thompson, what's happening?
Nothing, man. I am enjoying being back home after a week surrounded by not only the beauty of Augusta National, but all that damn pollen. It's almost killed me.
Oh, God, was it out?
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, you know, I love the place, but I'm allergic to pine trees. So
Yeah.
other than the U.S. Open at Pinehurst, this one lays me low.
Oh, I had the same pollen, pine tree, hay fever issue. No wonder I've resisted going to Augusta all this year. Maybe subconsciously, maybe I knew this. It could have been a little dangerous. I probably would have been like in a sneezing, coughing frenzy. Where does this? You've gone to a few Masters tournaments at this point. Where did this one rank?
You know, the actual excitement is at the very top. I mean, when Tiger or Phil is winning, it's a different feeling because if you're in the gallery, you really do catch something. I mean, we went out and caught Tiger right after his birdie on 8 the other day, you know, the one that you wrote about, and the feeling is electric. And the thing that's so bizarre is once it's gone, an emotion like that has such a small half-life that you can't even really remember what it ever felt like at all.
Right.
And so it's this thing that's alive in you, and then the moment it's dead, it's gone. And so when Tiger or Phil or somebody is winning, and the galleries are 10, 11, 12 deep, and you can see people, you know, you can see people following through the trees. You just see masses of moving color, and you realize that, you know, 700 yards away, that's a gallery moving through this place. It really is incredible. And so the shootout was great, but it does end up sort of being anticlimactic at the very end when it doesn't have that great big group hug.
Right. It doesn't. I've never covered a golf tournament, and I want to at some point. I don't know how it hasn't happened yet, but it seems like, you know, there's so much going on. You show up, like, say, on a Saturday. Like last Saturday, you show up. How do you decide this is what I'm going to do today? Do you want to do stuff that everybody else is looking at? Are you trying to look for your own original angle, or what's the thought process?
I mean, there are a couple of different ways to do it. I mean, a lot of these guys in the press room never leave the press room. And they'll tell you that, oh, it's because you watch it better on TV, and a certain amount is true, but a certain amount of it's just lazy. I mean, you can look around the press room Sunday in Augusta National and pick out the guys who don't have sunburns.
Yep.
And you're like, you guys sat on your asses all week, and you know who you are.
Well, why even go down if you're going to watch it on TV? I mean, you could get most of the quotes on the Masters press conference network or whatever.
But Bill, they don't have steakhouses and strip clubs at home.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Here's how I do it. You know, when Tiger made that putt at 8, I wanted to go out there and feel what that was like. Because how could you be a 10-minute walk from possibly one of the most important moments in sports in the last several years and not go feel what it's like?
Yeah.
And so that's usually my judge is there something going on right now that I want to experience firsthand? And look, when it gets close, comes down the end, you know, I have a spot where I go inside the Augusta National Clubhouse where I know where their televisions are so I can sort of watch. And then if I got to get out to the course and find somebody, I can, but it's not as long a walk from there as it is the press center. So you sort of try to figure out how to both be in a place and monitor what's going on. It'd be a lot better if you could have cell phones or radios on the golf course, but the security guards there do not play. They will bounce you right out.
So you can carry it. You just, if it goes off, you're out. You're out off the course.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, and you can't even carry it. I mean, fans can't bring it in. They're metal detectors. And if it goes off, I mean, it's, if you're a fan and it goes off, I think, you get thrown out that day and you probably lose your ticket forever.
Right.
I mean,
what about, so you're on the 8th hole with Tiger on Sunday, and you said it's packed. Like, do you have a good view of it, or you're just in the pack? Like, what can you see?
You have to, mostly you're just in the pack. And the beauty of Augusta National, though, is it's the same tournament, the same course every year. So you do figure out where to go to be to see it. So, when Tiger hits 11T, you know that you're not going to see anything on 11. So if you skip up to 12, there's a little place where you can sit on the ground and you can see 11 green, 12T, 12 green, 13T. And so okay, the second he tees off on 13, we're going up to 14.
Yeah.
And sort of wait on him to get there. So you do have to know your way around the golf course and know that I need to go from here to here. This is the best way to get there, so that you do actually see a lot if you know how to watch it. So
it almost like it's like you're on an African safari and you need a tour guide, but you become your own tour guide.
It's no kidding. I mean, there was a new reporter this year who was staying in our house, and the first day we got there, I showed him how to get to Amen Corner quickly.
Yeah.
I'm just like, nobody's playing yet. Just come with me. You want to cross 1, cross 9, walk across the pasture, go behind 17 green, cross 15, 14, and boom, you're right there.
And then you get there.
And then you're there, and it takes you 10 minutes instead of 30.
So if you don't know some of these tricks and you go, it could end up being a huge waste of time.
And you get very lost, but you do figure it out, and that's one of the cool things about the event is that the more you go, the better you get at it.
I kind of feel like one of the things one of the reasons I've never wanted to go is because it's so much fun to watch on TV. I can't imagine that the live experience would top it. You're saying it does.
I think it does, only because what you lose in clarity, you make up in emotion. I mean, it's like, the prose is better on your television, but the poems are much, much better on TV, in person. I mean,
right.
It's just this feeling that's inside of you that, when Tiger is breathing down somebody's neck and there's some golfer who knows it, and you hear these roars. I know it's become a cliche, the roars at Augusta, but you do hear them. And they come from the other side of the golf course, sort of muffled by breaks of pine trees. And you just know that as there once was a roar that was only heard for Palmer and a roar that was only heard for Nicklaus, there's a huge difference between a Tiger Woods birdie and anyone else's birdie. And the reason I keep coming back to, as you wrote, look, people want him to win. It doesn't matter what people say about his personal life. They're ready for him to win. And it's because that roar doesn't lie. And it's incredible, and it still sounds different than everybody else's.
And Mickelson's maybe 70% there?
Maybe. It's just a different thing.
Is anybody else even in the conversation?
No.
Fred Couples, like maybe 15%?
No, Couples has a good roar because there's that relationship with the crowd, and they know him and they see him. But, I definitely would say that, you pick the three guys who have this relationship there, especially Phil, because he finally won a major there and has been so sort of glowing and talking about Augusta. I mean, it's funny because, Phil gushes on and on and on about Magnolia Lane, and then you ask Tiger Woods about it, and he says, dude, they're just trees, know? And so, he's not buying verbally, at least, into the mystique. But people love Phil, and they love Freddie Couples.
So you feel like the fan connection is where it was before all the crap happened with Tiger. You feel like that is at least back in Augusta.
I think it is back.
It's pretty interesting.
And I'll tell you, anybody who says that people who are watching a sport event don't care about the outcome are just lying. You have these feelings. You're out there watching it. And I found myself, when he was over that eagle putt, was it 13 or 15?
15.
It was 15. I wanted that putt to go in.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people did. And I think there are a lot of people who wanted it to go in who were surprised by the fact that they wanted it to go in.
Yeah. And, it felt so anticlimactic when he finished at -10. And what's really interesting is the South African, Charles Schwartzel, I think he birdied the last 4, right? And it's like you can't ask for a better finish than that, and yet nobody really cared.
No, it was interesting to me. And it's funny how, Tiger knows. He just has sort of a sense of what's going to win.
Yeah.
So he posts 10 under, and Jeff Ogilvy posts 10 under. And so I'm standing in the clubhouse in front of a television in between Jeff Ogilvy and Jeff Ogilvy's wife, Julie. And they're watching, to see the guys come home, to see if somebody chokes, to see if the lead falls to 10. And Julie says, "You want a drink?" And Jeff's like, "No, let me wait till we're officially out of it." And they sit there and watch. And at that moment, I sort of turn to the right and see out the windows onto the front side of the clubhouse, and there's Stevie Williams carrying Tiger's golf clubs to the car. I mean, they're getting in the car and leaving.
Yeah.
And the golfers are still on the golf course. He's like, this won't hold. We're going home.
They know.
Yeah, they know. And it's just interesting how, Jeff was sort of into the gallows humor, but some part of him believed. And Tiger was putting his crap in the car and taking it to the house.
Tell me about the cricket piece that you did. You actually went and you watched cricket, and then you wrote a column telling me that I should care about cricket. How did that experience change your perception on the whole big sporting scene?
Well, look, man, I thought for sure that, cricket is a sport that takes 5 days. Oh, my God, this is like watching paint dry. And I'm a guy who doesn't even really like baseball, so now I'm supposed to go watch cricket.
Yeah.
I got there, and it's incredible. And basically, the whole sport of cricket is changing right now. It's going from, the cricket that we make fun of, which is the 5-day test match cricket, is the oldest form. And in the last decade, a newer form of cricket has sprung up. It's basically called 2020, which means that it lasts 3 hours instead of 5 days. It's designed for television. And so this is becoming much more popular as the older form of the game is struggling. And so it's very much a sport in crisis.
It's hard to believe that a sport that would take 3 hours would be more popular than a sport that takes 5 days.
No,
in the short attention span generation.
Well, that's what it is. So it's sort of like, the problem is, imagine you love NFL football. Somebody decides that, hey, let's play an NFL football game in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But what's happened in cricket is that took off, and now the skill sets that were required to play the full game are being bred out. And so some of the things that made you like football no longer exist in the shorter version of the game, and the players who are best at it no longer are taught from the time they're children to do it. So you're sort of watching media kill a sport by trying to save it.
So do you think it's killing it or saving it?
I think it's both. Well, I think it's changing it, and I think at some point people are going to look up and ask whether this thing we have that saved it is actually the thing we loved.
So it basically morphed it.
It did.
It may not have killed it or saved it. It just morphed it into something else.
It just changed it, and change is inevitable, and that's the sort of thing that people are struggling with. But I wrote about, there's a guy I'd never heard of until I got there. His name is Sachin Tendulkar, and he's the most famous guy in India. His agent asked me one day over coffee, in all seriousness, if Derek Jeter had a Secret Service detail. And I started laughing. I'm like, no. He goes, oh, well, the government takes care of Sachin. I mean, he's a national treasure. The government protects him.
Yeah.
And so he's completely changed the way that cricket is played in India from a very passive, defensive sport to someone who was aggressive. And so, Sachin made his debut in 1989. India opened up their economy in 1990. And the India that you think of today was born in 1990. And so all of these, international companies arrived with huge marketing budgets, and they got there and they looked around and said, here's this kid. And so he was their first, sports. He was their Michael Jordan. He was their Babe Ruth because of the way his athletic rise mirrored the rise of an economy. He's their Muhammad Ali because he changed the nature of sports celebrity. He's all of these things wrapped up into one. And this last World Cup was his last World Cup, and he never won one. And so we were there. I was sort of, going along for the ride with Sachin as this country that had changed rapidly and was trying to deal with all of the change, because the same things that are changing in cricket are also changing in Indian society as a whole. I mean, those things sort of mirror each other, what's being gained and what's being lost. So it really was lucky that I stumbled into this sport and this player in this country at a time of great, great change. Basically, if I'd have screwed this story up, they should have fired me.
It was really good. And another one that you did that I liked was the Cleveland story. How long did you spend in Cleveland?
8 grease and liquor-filled days.
8 grease and liquor-filled days. That sounds like Cleveland.
Yeah.
It's one of. It's not as. Well, what's the greasiest American city for food? You're a food and drink guy.
You know, I think it's going to have to be. Well, look, it's got to be New Orleans.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Or it's got to be. You know, it could be Memphis. Because Memphis is like. You know, Memphis is like New Orleans, but you know, without. It's not cool. It's like all the crappy parts of New Orleans.
Right. What was your sense when you were there that Cleveland was really in the depths of despair? It seems like they've at least gotten over the LeBron thing to some degree. Now the Indians are playing well, and the timing could not be better because you have the playoffs starting right now, and instead of being put in the position where there's, you know, every NBA night they're going to be rooting against a team, they have this young baseball team that's actually kind of fun.
You know, I think people would always rather be hopeful than miserable. And, I mean, or looking for a reason to be so. So I think you're right. I think, you know, people can look at the Indians team right now and see not just what is, but what could be. And I think when you have a city like Cleveland, whose entire question it asks itself now is, what could we be? That's the perfect team for the city. I mean, it's funny how sports does that completely randomly and accidentally. It's not like they constructed a baseball team to somehow match an ethos of a town, but that does seem to be happening, and it's one of the, you know, wonderful things about loving sports is that you find these things there, because that's the thing for Cleveland. I mean, it's trying to figure out what it is now.
And what did you figure out? What is it?
Well,
do they know?
No, but the thing that's interesting is that, you know, 50 years ago, Cleveland had the third largest number of Fortune 500 companies in the world, in the United States. It was, you know, the third largest city. Now I think, I don't know, it's in the 40th, in the 40s. The number of things that were invented in Cleveland is, I mean, it's really stunning. And, you know, this was a city that peaked in 1950, and the Indians, you know, obviously haven't won anything since the city's population started declining. And, you know, it is a city that's trying to figure out what it is. Like here, I'm finding the list now because you're going to go crazy for this. The number of things that were invented in Cleveland.
Number of things that were invented in Cleveland. This will be interesting. They don't get credit for rock and roll, right?
No, we're not going to give them rock and roll. No. Well, yeah, which, by the way, that's ludicrous, being, you know, someone who grew up in the Mississippi Delta. You know,
I think they should take, maybe that's what Cleveland should do. They should take credit for rock and roll, and when people question them, say, well, why do we have the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, like, well, you have a Hall of Fame. I don't see a Hall of Fame in your city.
We're the one that has a Hall of Fame, so we invented rock and roll. How about that?
All right, here we go. Let's see. Cleveland was home to the first home mail delivery, the first street light, the first streetcar, the first gas-powered car, the first X-ray, the first traffic light. Lifesavers were created there. So was Superman.
Yeah,
on and on and on and on.
I would also throw in the first, looking back in history, probably the first real steroids baseball team, the 95 Indians. Because now it seems like Manny might have potentially been doing it his entire career for all we know. And I've always thought
we have no idea.
We have no idea, but it's all hypothetical. The other thing I think we should talk about is scotches. You're not keen on the big smoky styles, Scotch whiskeys.
Oh, see, I'm a bourbon guy.
You're a bourbon guy. You're just bourbon through and through.
Oh, yeah, like here, we'll walk down right there. We're going to walk down right now to my bar.
You have a bar? You don't have kids yet, do you?
No.
That's why you have a bar.
Yeah, see, but the thing is, what's funny is when you have kids, you need it more.
Well, that's probably true.
Here's what I got. I got 20-year-old Pappy Van Winkle. I've got 23-year-old Pappy Van Winkle. And I have a decanter that's full of Bullet.
Oh, when you have a decanter, you've really gone to another level. That's what I found with bars.
Because you're like, I don't want people to know how many of these empty bottles are coming through here. I'm finding a way to manage. It's media management, really. I'm just managing the story of my own bar. I do have a bottle of scotch here. Some Lefroy, 10-year-old.
Well, my new website that I've been working on with a bunch of people that's going to launch hopefully this summer. You're going to be writing an occasional food and drink. We're able to secure you just for a few times, just to tap into your food and drink knowledge.
And I'm wildly excited about it. I actually reported a piece for you yesterday on the way home from Atlanta. From Augusta.
Say no more. I don't even want to know what it's about. But I want to
ruin the surprise.
I actually was mad that you did the Idiot's Guide to Whiskey a few months ago. When did you do that one?
That was St. Andrews, so that would have been last year at the British Open.
Yeah, because I want a few of those for the site. I think it's important.
Oh, look, it is. It's, everybody should really know about whiskey. I mean, it's way more American than apple pie.
Well, here's the thing about whiskey, because I always find I go in phases with different drinks, and I'll get burned out on a drink, and I'll go to something else. If you order a whiskey and it seems like you know what you're talking about, it puts you in a whole different level of respect with whoever you're with and the bartender and everybody around. They're like, whoa, look at this guy.
Well, and look, this is wrong and this is shallow, but I'm standing in a bar and somebody orders some ridiculous drink, like it's some dude and he orders a whiskey sour.
Right. Or
he's like, I need a Woodford Reserve and Coke. I immediately dismiss him from my mind as someone who I'd ever like to have a conversation with.
That's a big in these fancy drinks are very big in LA. It'll be like, you'll have the whiskey, but it also has to have cane sugar, and it's got to have mint, and it's got to have like bitters and all these different things. And you're a liquor and water guy.
Well, yeah, it's like, look, I like a Sazerac sometimes. Every now and then I want a Manhattan. But, the whole idea, it's supposed to taste like liquor. I'll have a Lagavulin and neat. Were you at the ESPN Super Bowl party in Miami?
Yes, for like an hour.
Yeah. The reason I was only there an hour is that they only had vodka.
Right.
They only had liquor. They only had drinks for people who don't like to drink. There was literally no bourbon.
That does make me mad when they have these giant parties, but they're sponsored by one bottle. And it's just like, hey, dude, if you want to drink, you got to drink this specific bottle. We're making the choice for you. That's
and I'm like,
it infringes my rights as an American. I'm with you, though. You need nice bar selection. I'm planning to get into whiskeys more as I hit my 40s. Because it took me until I was 35 to realize that anything you put with a liquor is going to make you feel worse the following day. Because I used to be a big Jack and Coke, bourbon and Coke guy. But you come to realize the next day that you've basically had 12 Cokes. It's not good for you.
You feel like crap. You've had all the calories of the liquor. And then, what you should do, I mean, I'm in no way affiliated with this brand. I just think it's the best bourbon in the world.
Yeah.
Get you some Pappy Van Winkle.
All right.
I mean,
great name.
And the guy who makes it, this guy Julian, and it's like his granddad's deal, and they bottle almost none of it, and it's incredibly hard to find. Put it this way. A bourbon drinker goes into a liquor store. If they have Pappy Van Winkle, they buy all of it.
Interesting.
I mean, I've gone into liquor stores 2 or 3 times, saw that they had it, bought all of it.
Last question. Can you explain how when you walk into any bar in America, people know who you are?
Oh, see, now who have you heard this lie from?
I'm just saying, by the way, that's my phone going off, because God forbid that never happened during a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just saying, that's your reputation, is that even though, how old are you now, like 31?
I'm 34, Bill.
34. You're 34. And you, by the way, have never lived in New York City, as far as I could tell, right? You've never actually lived there for more than
no,
a couple weeks at a time or whatever, but somehow you can go into any New York City bar and it's like Norm from Cheers.
Well, all right, that is a little true.
It's a little true,
certain
okay.
Places. No, in P.J. Clark's it's true.
P.J. Clark's is true, okay.
I mean, and a couple of other places.
All right.
I don't know, man. I like bars. I guess I spend a lot of the money there.
I'm kind of afraid to hang out with you, I'm going to be honest.
No, you'd be fine.
It's one of those things you wake up the next day and your wallet's gone and you're just lying on somebody's floor and you don't know what happened.
And there's a tiger and it's this whole thing.
And then you're fine and you're like, hey, let's go get some breakfast. What? Wright Thompson, I look forward to working with you a little bit more. It's going to be fun on a new venture whenever that happens, and learning about what is it, Pappy Van Winkle?
Dude, Pappy Van Winkle. Go to a liquor store right now in L.A. Put it this way: if you ask for it somewhere, they will know that you know what you're talking about.
Okay.
And in Las Vegas, I think the only place that has it is whatever Mario Batali's place in the basement of the Venetian is. Okay. But they have Van Winkle. And if you go in there and just say, I want a 20-year-old Van Winkle, they will look at you like you have uttered some sort of secret phrase.
See, this is the information I need. Wright Thompson, a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
See you.
A guy that we've been meaning to have for a while, and now he's here on the Subway Fresh Take hotline from Yahoo's Puck Daddy blog, Greg Wyshynski. What's happening?
All right, what do you want to know about the Bruins?
Listen, I'm in. I've been watching this year. Very quietly, but I've been watching. I actually was watching when Chara had the big hit.
Oh, yeah? What'd you think of it?
At the time, I didn't feel like it was that dirty. I mean, it was one of those plays. Every once in a while, somebody gets checked into that thing, and it just kind of happened. I was watching because I felt like the game was going to get chippy, and it got chippy, but I didn't feel like it was intentional.
Well, if nothing else, it gave the world a new appreciation for the word stanchion, and a new appreciation for the word turnbuckle and its placement on the hockey rink. I mean, the one thing that hit did was it turned the potential for this Bruins Canadian series that we're going to have in the first round. It gave it a chance to really become something more than the blood rivalry it already is. I mean, I can't even imagine what those knuckleheads up in Montreal are going to do outside the arena when Boston comes up there for Game 3. I don't know how many materials you need to pull together to build a Zdeno Chara to burn an effigy.
Right.
But they're already planning. They're hitting whatever the Canadian equivalent of Home Depot is right now.
And I liked when they played their next game after that in Boston, which the Bruins annihilated them. But Chara, I've really gained a lot of respect for Chara through this whole thing because he not only did he not change how he played, but he kind of, I don't want to say he embraced it, but he stayed who he was. He was knocking guys around. That's who he is. And I don't know. He's one of my favorite Bruins in a while.
You could have gone one of two ways on that, which is you could have been apologetic and acknowledged that there was past history between him and Pacioretty, or you could have did what Chara did, which is to just kind of move on from it. I mean, I agree with you. I think he's a respectful player. Where the Bruins kind of lost me a little bit and kind of lost some other people in the debate about that hit was when he said he didn't realize who he was hitting, which I don't buy for a second. I mean, the man's one of the best defensemen in hockey. I don't buy for a second he doesn't know what numbers the cat's wearing that he's sitting into that turnbuckle. And when Mark Recchi came up and did his bit about how Pacioretty was at the movie theater and how the Montreal may have been embellishing his concussion for effect, and that really kind of turned that thing ugly for a lot of people, especially because it seemed like the whole situation had scabbed over a little bit in the weeks following the hit.
And then Recchi trying to say that he was doing it to take the pressure off Chara. Like, they were playing in Boston. You don't need to take pressure off the guy when he's playing at home. But it's certainly a matchup that did not need extra bad blood because, I don't know, it's got as much bad blood as you're going to have anyway. For sure.
I mean, it's an original six matchup. The fan bases hate each other. The teams hate each other. What I worry about for Boston, because I think they've got a real shot this year at winning the Cup, or at least playing for the Cup.
Really?
Well, yeah. We'll get to that in a second, sir. I'm a believer. I'm diving myself in the black and gold this year. But I think what it is, or black and yellow, I don't know which one it is for Boston. I always get confused. I think what it is for this series, though, is that, if I'm Boston, I want a nice, concentrate on the ice sort of series to lead off this thing. If they were playing Tampa Bay or Buffalo, it's all going to be about the hockey. They're playing Montreal. You have to deal with all this ancillary stuff about the Pacioretty hit, the rivalry, the war of words, all that stuff, whatever's going to happen up near outside of Bell Center when they go up to Montreal. And B, you're dealing with a different emotional dynamic because of the rivalry and because of what happened this season between the teams, that it's almost like an air of unpredictability because you don't know what's going to happen next, or you don't know how Montreal reacts because of everything that's happened between the teams this season. So if I'm Boston, I'd rather just have a series where it's two hockey teams playing than this blood feud.
My preference is to never play the Canadians because, last year when the Flyers came back from 3-0 and, it was obviously a little bit scarring, but I think once Krejci got hurt, I think everybody kind of knew the Bruins, they'd been overachieving anyway. Like, that was the one guy. Once he went down, they were open to that. I almost sort of rather lost their Flyers series when they did than go to the next round and get killed by the Canadians. Like, to me, it was like a mercy killing. This is great. We don't have to lose to the Canadians now. And it doesn't seem to matter who's on either team. Anybody who has Bruins DNA is just going to be terrified of the Canadians. That's just the way this rivalry is, right?
Right.
And
you're conditioned to be that way. Well, I like I just said before, I think Boston's got a real shot at potentially winning this whole thing, at least the East, at least playing for the Cup. And, it's often asked whether or not sports writers and bloggers have a rooting interest in things. When you're sitting in the press box, if you're rooting for a certain team or whatever. And at the end of the day, we're all rooting for the best story, right? So if things set up a certain way here, let's say things set up the way that a lot of people think they are, and Boston beats Montreal and then goes on to play in the second round, well, there's a chance they could play Philly. And now all of a sudden, from a storyline, from a hero's journey Joseph Campbell standpoint, you're dealing with beating your arch rival in the first round in an emotionally chaotic series, and then having your chance at redemption against the Flyers in the second round potentially. So I mean, if you're one of these people that thinks about the sequence of events on the postseason DVD, that's kind of how it's setting up right now for Boston.
Where in the hockey community, where did people stand on the whole choking away the 3-0?
Oh, it was an embarrassment. I mean, it was stunning because it's just so rare to see it happen. And I think what takes the sting out of it a little bit is the fact that the Flyers did end up playing for the Cup and did end up pushing Chicago real deep into a series. So it's clear that they weren't a pushover. I mean, this wasn't a fluky thing. This was a really good team kind of finding its stride and getting back in the series. But yeah, it's devastating, but at the same time, it's not the same thing as in, say, like baseball, where you may not get another shot for a few years. I mean, the really great thing about hockey is that you have the immediacy for redemption, because the season starts so quickly through the summer, and then you get 16 teams making the postseason. There's always a chance that you're going to be one of those 16 and kind of erase the bad vibes. I mean, as a Devils fan, right, 1994 was a nightmare for me. I was in high school. I couldn't show my face in the hallway after the Rangers beat the Devils in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, and then the next year the Devils won the Stanley Cup, and then all was well.
What was it like to be a fan of the team that kind of ruined the NHL in the 90s? How have you reconciled that?
Last time we spoke, I think you were talking about making noise about a 30 for 30 thing about the neutral zone trap, right?
It was in the final cut of topics we were talking about. It was going to be basically the premise would be how the Devils ruined hockey, and we decided that it would be just as boring as it was to watch it actually when it happened.
Well, I'll tell you exactly what it's like growing up a Devils fan and then still being a Devils fan during the ruining hockey phase of the franchise's history. You become very, very skillful on defense, much like your team is, as far as trying to defend the dogma, defend the philosophy. You talk about, you've got every single argument you can make about Brodeur being a product of the system,
right.
Or, whether or not the trap is real hockey, or all that other stuff. You've become really, really sort of an angry little varmint in the corner when it comes to people snarking on your team and snarking on the trap, and so that's what you are as a Devils fan. And much like anybody from Jersey, you become defiant. Yeah,
like you didn't have a complex already. I feel the same way about the Pats with the Tuck Rule and Spygate and all that stuff. I'm just in my corner growling at everybody now.
Yeah, and at the end, you want to be able to just point to the rings and say, "Hey, look at this!" Like scoreboard, right? But you're still going to have people that are talking about all the other stuff that led to it, and it's always going to. I mean, the Devils won 3 Stanley Cups. They were on the cusp of maybe being a dynasty through those years, and all you heard about is exactly as you said, which is great. And then you made everybody not want to watch hockey.
Yeah, it does seem like there's some nice matchups in round one. If you just go down the line, like I thought it was fascinating that the Blackhawks snuck into that 8 seed. Like, there's no way the Canucks wanted to play the Blackhawks, right?
No, they're emotionally scarred by the Blackhawks. I mean, there's a certain part of your brain that thinks that when they see the Indian head and they see Patrick Kane's mullet and they hear that dopey goal song da 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 again for the 5,000th time at the arena in Chicago, that it's all going to come back and haunt them like a nightmare. But this is the good news for Vancouver is that I do feel like there's a different vibe about the team. I mean, they're the best team in hockey. Their blue line, their defense is better than it's been maybe in the history of the franchise. And then Luongo not only has a new goalie coach that has really helped him out to have a fantastic regular season, but he's got a guy behind him that I think you can draw a comparison to Boston. He's got his little Tuukka Rask behind him, and the Schneider guy, who can come in and win some games if all of a sudden Luongo falters. So it's a different Vancouver team playing Chicago. And then the other aspect of it is this isn't the same Chicago team. I mean, the bottom line is that, Luongo ended the season last year's crying in the locker room because Dustin Byfuglien tormented him. He had Byfuglien in his crease setting up a lawn chair for 2 series, and Byfuglien's not there anymore to do that. So instead of having to answer 1,000 questions about what Byfuglien's backside looks like before a series, Luongo's going to be able to just concentrate on the game itself.
And the Canucks fascinate me. Obviously, as a Red Sox fan, I identify with any tortured team. And you can just kind of see the signs. Now you look at the Canucks. I think they've been in the league 40 years, right? Didn't they start 70, I'm going to say? And I think they've been in the Cup once. They seem to they have this thing where they have the team that looks good and then something crazy will happen. And now this year, it really looks like things lined up nicely for them, and Crosby goes out and all this stuff. They're the favorites, right?
I think it's safe to say they're the favorites, yeah. I mean, there's a certain hesitancy because of them playing Chicago in the first round and people understanding that they've got a bit of a mental block against that team. But I think just overall they're the favorites. I mean, they're deep up front, they're well coached, they're deep on the blue line. I can't imagine they're not the favorites. But you're right, freaky stuff happens, and it sort of poisoned their minds. It makes people expect them to crap out in the semifinals as they have, since the lockout pretty much. And it's also bred this tinfoil hat society in the Vancouver media where they believe that the NHL is plotting actively to subvert every playoff run that they had, which is insane. I mean, like last year in the playoffs, because a goal was disallowed, they actually accused someone in the NHL front office of being a sleeper agent for the Los Angeles Kings because he had an association with the Kings as a coach.
Wow.
It's that level of psychosis we're dealing with. So I almost wish that Vancouver would win just to kind of get everybody over it and not have this crazy psychology out there about whether the forces of the NHL are working against the franchise.
What is it about the Twins that it just feels like this should be a bigger story and they should be household names on the lines of Crosby and Ovechkin? And yeah, within the hockey community, obviously the YouTube clips and people kind of revere the connection those two guys have. But yeah, in the mainstream, not there. What do you think it is?
It's a shame, too, because if one gets hurt, the other one feels pain, like Tomax and Zaymot from G.I. Joe, which I thought was really interesting. But no, it's because they're Swedish and because they don't necessarily have the most crackling personalities and because they play in Vancouver, which is as far removed from New York and Toronto and the Eastern media headquarters as you could possibly get. But it's interesting. There is a sort of a debate in the hockey community right now about Daniel Sedin winning MVP this year because his brother Henrik won it last year. So would the Twins winning MVPs back-to-back be the thing that kind of breaks them in the United States? Like, that anomaly, that sort of quirk is the kind of thing that gets mainstream media's attention. Wow, Twins won the MVP back-to-back years. Is that going to be what actually puts them over? Or would it be a Stanley Cup? I mean, if the front image on USA Today is two guys that look the same raising the Stanley Cup, is that going to be indelible for people?
I think the other problem is that, for me, like casual hockey fan just watches Bruins games. Like, I still don't know which Twin is the goal scorer and which one is like the setup guy.
Well, they trade off, right? So it's kind of hard to figure. But the one thing I'll say about it,
I thought one of them was more playmaker-y.
Well, yeah, I think traditionally Henrik's more the goal scorer than Daniel is, or maybe they switch. I don't know. You see, your point is well taken. I couldn't even tell you definitively because sometimes they switch off, but. The thing about them is that you watch them, and it really is like sonar. I mean, it really is two guys that don't even have to look at each other with the puck, and they're making amazing plays, and they're doing ridiculous things. I mean, it's a highlight reel when they're on the ice together. And you'd figure that'd be a selling point, but it kind of brings it back to the uncomfortable truth about the NHL and American television, which is that when Vancouver plays on Versus or plays on NBC, the ratings from Vancouver don't count. So it doesn't behoove them to really give that team the type of push that it probably deserves as being arguably the most entertaining team in hockey right now.
And also, I would argue that that's, maybe this wasn't the case 20 years ago, but heading into this decade, that's got to be one of the NHL's most important markets. Like, that whole city has taken off, and I think it's become one of the signature Canadian teams. I don't know if that has always been the case. Would you agree with that?
No, it hasn't always been the case, but it's definitely been the case since, at least since the lockout. I mean, they're a hockey mad market, and you can tell that things have sort of changed in Vancouver, because now you get, the guys showing up in the green spandex near the penalty box and doing the green man routine. You're getting a lot of sort of cult of personality in the fan base surrounding this team, along with this team kind of gaining a personality. I mean, like a guy like Ryan Kessler, who was on the U.S. Olympic team, one of the best defensive players in hockey,
right,
made a name for himself in the last couple of months by randomly showing up in the background of his teammates' interviews, like eating a slice of pizza or wearing a goalie helmet. So they're kind of getting in on the whole quirkiness of being this team from way out in the Northwest. And I think, like I said, I find it really appealing, and I wish that there was a way that the Sedins and the rest of that team could be more of a focal point for the NHL in the U.S. But, I mean, unless it's Montreal or Toronto, there's a lot of casual fans that aren't going to be hooked by any Canadian team.
I think the NHL's failing them a little bit, because the clips are amazing. And now it's like, I think on YouTube, I would say they're on YouTube more than probably any current star, and there's got to be some way to market that. Some of the sonar stuff.
You'd hope that, but like I said, it's tough when. I mean, think of it this way: if it winds up being Vancouver in the final against a team from the East, and that team from the East isn't Montreal, well, the incredible rating story that's been written about this league for the last 3 years, in which they've had Detroit and Pittsburgh twice, and then Chicago and Philly, well, it's going to have to be a different story. I mean, when Anaheim and Ottawa met for the Cup, the ratings were historically terrible.
Yeah.
And if the Vancouver's in the final again, no matter how entertaining it is, and no matter how wonderful it is to have that team on that stage, the ratings are just going to suffer by virtue of the fact there's a Canadian team in the finals. So that's the reality of the situation, is that as much as it should be at the forefront for this league to market these guys, despite the fact that they're in a Canadian market, it becomes difficult for them to look at their bottom line, which is, let's put on the Flyers, Rangers, Penguins as much as we can, and then at the same time put on this Canadian team and say, look at these Sedins, look at them fly, they're the best thing in hockey.
And yet, if you care about sports, it would be great if they were in the finals, because then I like any time it's Canada against the U.S. in the finals.
It does certainly add a certain extra aspect of drama to it. And listen, as a guy who was in Vancouver for the Olympics, and had the agony and the ecstasy of seeing Team USA beat Canada and then lose to Canada in the most important game of the tournament, yeah, it'd be nice to maybe see a U.S. team hoist the cup on Vancouver ice. I'm not going to lie to you. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. But yeah, that aspect of it is an undeniable fact as far as being an American hockey fan.
I've said this many times, but I just wish there was more Canadian teams. And it's never been totally explained to me why it's good that Nashville has a team. Or like you look at, Tampa Bay and Nashville are in the playoffs this year. And I just don't get it.
Well, there's a couple of different explanations you'd get. I mean, the league would say that it's important for these U.S. markets to have franchises by virtue of the fact that they've helped get the league larger television contracts. And I mean, the next television contract they're talking about is astronomical. So, you could argue that the argument's successfully being made to that end. And then, like I said, the other aspect of it is the fact that, it is a U.S.-based league. I mean, there are 24 franchises in the U.S. right now, and the reality of the situation is that there's a certain apathy towards teams from Canadian markets that American fans aren't familiar with. If you have a team in Winnipeg, it could make money hand over fist. A, it doesn't guarantee that players are going to want to go up there and play, and B, it doesn't guarantee that American fans are going to care when Winnipeg comes to town. They care when Montreal and Toronto do, for sure, because those are franchises they remember from their youth and they can identify with, and they, one of them, both used to have baseball teams, one of them still does. They can locate them on the map, is what I'm trying to say. When you get smaller market Canadian teams, it does play into this notion that American fans are just kind of apathetic to it. Even though I think the good news, Bill, is that there is a push now to at least bring some teams back. I mean, Quebec City, for example, is a city that I guarantee you will have another NHL franchise within the next 4 or 5 years.
I hope so. I used to love the Nordiques. I love when
for sure. I mean, they're going to get an arena built. There's clearly a push within the league to get it. I would say that there's more optimism and more movement towards getting a team back in Quebec City than putting a team in Winnipeg. Winnipeg definitely has its champions, but I think that there's more of an enthusiasm to bring hockey back to Quebec City.
Let's go through the series quickly, and you give me the most compelling story in each one. We already did Bruins Habs. Rangers Caps.
Most compelling is whether the Caps' complete turnaround on their philosophy, going from this freewheeling offensive team to a team that's been laser-focused on the playoffs and playing better defensive hockey, is going to overcome what is a Rangers team that is built to beat a team like the Caps. I mean, they shot blocking, great goaltending, timely scoring. This is the formula that's been used to beat the Capitals in the playoffs before, and it remains to be seen if this change in philosophy is going to save Bruce Boudreau's job, and maybe Ovechkin gets to the finals at one point.
Doesn't Bruce Boudreau have immunity after his phenomenal Hard Knocks appearance or 24/7 appearance, or no? That doesn't count. First of all, everything I've heard was that he was seriously on the chopping block during that series. HBO must have been maybe sitting back silently praying. I don't know if they wanted him to go or wanted him to stay, because he was a star of the show, but he could have been gone because they couldn't win a game. Right.
But listen, the reality of the surroundings is that he's if he gets past the first round, I think he's okay. If he doesn't get past the first round, it might be time to move in a different direction, because they've certainly made the additions to the roster that they feel put them in a position to try to win a Stanley Cup this year. And
is there an explanation for Ovechkin's stats have really dropped over the last 4 years?
Everybody's got a different opinion on it, whether it's a change in overall team philosophy and trying to get them to play more responsible defensively, whether it's a change in his own philosophy as far as I don't care what I do in the regular season anymore, because if I crap out in the playoffs then it doesn't matter, or he's hurt, which I tend to believe might be the third one.
Oh, I have a fourth theory.
Sure.
Steroids.
That theory always winds up popping up in the Yahoo comments for some reason. I don't know why, but
I don't know, some Russian steroid scandal. I'm just throwing it out there.
The Caps had their dalliance with a steroid scandal a couple. I forget it was last year or the year before, in which there was a chiropractor, I think, tangentially had an association with the team and got pinched. But no, I mean, that's something that's been floating out there, but it's never not.
Oh, I was kidding. I wasn't serious.
No, for sure, man. That's
really
that's something that people say. I mean, it's not one of these situations where I don't think there's any validity to it, but it sure is something that people will say. But again,
it is weird. He went from 65 goals to like 30 in 4 years.
No,
that's so strange.
So I think that the actual reasons, as opposed to the crackpot theory that I gave you, all combined to maybe lead to that sort of thing. But again, I wonder can you imagine what it's like for Ovechkin in the sense that you put up these amazing numbers in the regular season, you perform in the playoffs, you lose in the Olympics in an embarrassing fashion, so none of it matters unless your team wins in the playoffs. It's almost like nothing you do deserves to get recognized. So I think that's kind of weighed on him this season and probably affected his approach to the season as well.
And I think that's probably the best case for whether hockey needs to do something to kind of, because obviously the playoffs are 1,000 times more important than the regular season. I think the regular season has been better and chippier than I can remember, at least watching the Bruins games. But it does seem like they need something mid-season to kind of, some sort of tournament to maybe guarantee a number one seed, or I don't know what, but to maybe mix it up a tiny bit. You have any theories on that?
As far as to make the regular season mean more?
Yeah, it's just, as you said, you can go on cruise control for 6 months and then just turn it on for the 2 playoff months. I guess the NBA is like that too.
Well, I think the argument you're making is the argument for divisional play again, which is, when it wasn't 1 through 8, when it was you had to get out of your own division in order to qualify for the playoffs. And I think that for a lot of us, I'm 34, for a lot of us that kind of grew up during that era, with Patrick Division Hockey and Adams Division Hockey and that kind of thing. Remember every night being life and death for some reason. Now, that might not have been the case. That might have been the fallacy of youth, but there was that sense, and I don't necessarily think there's that sense. There's a sense for teams that are like 6 through 8 or 9 in the standings at the end of the season, but not necessarily for everybody that's in the top 8. So,
because the biggest difference,
the only theory that I give credence to as far as trying to make the regular season more valuable would be to try to shift the way that points are rewarded in a game, where the 60 minutes of hockey that you play in regulation are weighted more heavily than overtime or the shootout. And I'm a proponent of that. I think that's a good idea. I think putting more onus on the 5-on-5 play, the quote unquote actual hockey is better than the current format.
In basketball, you really need to get one of the top 4 seeds to make the finals. I mean, I think it's probably there's 6 seed, the 95 Rockets I think made it in 90, and then in the 99 Knicks were an 8 seed, but that was a lockout season. In hockey, if you make it, you have a chance. So it almost seems like, at the very least, the 1 seed should have 5 home games in round 1 or something. They got to wait it.
Some kind of advantage. I mean, the talk has always been if they ever expanded the playoffs, and I'm not really a fan of that. I mean, I kind of think if it ain't broke, don't fix it scenario with that. But the talk has always been if they expand it to like 10 teams in each conference, then the first 2 teams would maybe get a first round bye, that kind of thing, which maybe overcomplicates the playoffs in a way. But you're right. I mean, but again, the NBA NHL dichotomy there is the fact that, to put it simply, goaltending is illegal in the NBA, and it can carry you to the Stanley Cup in the NHL. Right. That's pretty much what it is. You have one player on your team that, if he is playing the best hockey of his career, can lead you all the way to a championship.
Sharks, Kings, as you pointed out in your column on Monday, the thing that these 2 teams have in common is they both hate Anaheim. What do you see in that series?
I was trying to find reasons to pick the Kings, to be honest with you, because I'm not necessarily a believer in the Sharks, and I kind of like this Kings team a little bit, but they lost their MVP, their leading scorer, their heart and soul in their lineup, Anze Kopitar, to an injury. He's not going to be back for the first round. They will get their second leading scorer, Justin Williams, back, which is great, but I just feel like this team hasn't gotten to a point where it's modulated the way it plays yet to compensate for Kopitar being out. I don't think they have enough scoring up front to deal with the Sharks team. Again, if the seeding was different, if they're playing Phoenix or Nashville, a team that didn't have the offensive weaponry of San Jose, I think I'd like the Kings a little bit better, but I don't see him winning this series.
In Ducks Nashville, nobody in the planet can name a Nashville player. Is that true?
It's pretty accurate, actually. I mean, they can name who the Nashville player is married to.
Right.
That's the Carrie Underwood team right there, right?
Oh, yeah.
For sure. So there's your star power. Put her on the poster.
And Anaheim's loaded.
I'm picking Nashville in that series because, one, it's the sports cliche of their due. Since the inception of this franchise, they've been a first-round bye for teams in the Western Conference, and I just feel like there's a different vibe with the team this year. I love their goaltending. I think that defensively they can stand up to what the Ducks have. But the Ducks have been the story of the league in the last stages of the season, as far as Corey Perry getting to 50 goals and really kind of asserting himself as an MVP candidate. And then, of course, Teemu Selanne. Teemu Selanne not only scoring at a ridiculous clip to help them get into the playoffs, but also having his first career fighting major in the finale. Yeah, oh yeah, good old-fashioned, the Finnish Flash, Teemu Selanne had one previous skirmish with Chris Chelios way back in his rookie season, but he never actually got a fighting major for it. And then he dropped gloves in the season finale, and I mean, much to the shock of the hockey world, but it was one of those situations where you sit back and you say to yourself, can this guy get any cooler? Oh, look, he's fighting now. Yes, he can.
That's great. How about Coyotes Red Wings? Is that a skipper? Do I skip that series?
Nah, man, that's a series a lot of people feel like the Coyotes have a real legit shot at pulling the upset there. There's some questions about Detroit's health. Henrik Zetterberg is going to miss game 1, and he's not even skating yet, so there's a chance that he could be out for more than one game. Jimmy Howard, their goalie, is a little bit banged up, and they don't have Chris Osgood behind him. They have Joey McDonald behind him, so it's a different kind of situation. So Detroit might be in a spot of trouble. They got home ice. They beat them in 7 last year, and I don't necessarily think that they should be taken lightly despite those injuries. I'm picking Detroit in the series, but it could be a long one, and it could be a very interesting one.
So this is why the hockey playoffs are great. You can make a case for anybody to be dangerous.
Oh God,
you really
sure.
could.
Oh, it's yeah. I mean, every because the slates are clean, and at the same time that you can rely on statistics, or you can rely on your hockey gut for these kinds of things, right? So, like, statistically, based on what's happened in the past, Chicago should beat Vancouver. But if you're thinking about Vancouver as your cup team and you're like, what will be their magic journey? It begins with them beating Chicago.
Right. How about Flyers Sabres?
Tough one because the health of Chris Pronger is going to really turn this series. I think the Flyers have struggled down the stretch. They're not playing good hockey. They called up Michael Layton, who was their goaltender in the finals last year, who had been in the AHL for most of the season, I think, to kind of just shake the team up a little bit. And they actually had their general manager come in and give a heart-to-heart to the dressing room, that sort of thing. I think if Pronger came back, his ability to play effectively in the postseason, I mean, he's a freaking warrior based on what everybody saw last year.
Yeah.
He's going to really kind of kickstart this team a little bit. But if he doesn't come back, the Sabres have been one of the hottest teams down the stretch, and they've got all kinds of good vibes because this Terry Pacula guy bought the team, and they've got, I mean, optimism in Buffalo is kind of a foreign concept to me, but there's definitely optimism in Buffalo. So if Pronger doesn't come back, I think the Sabres win. If he does come back, I think the Flyers win in 7.
You just said optimism in Buffalo in a sentence.
I know.
I've never heard that.
The words left my lips still, and I'm still shocked that they did, but it's true. There's this like happy vibe. It's the craziest thing.
People love the goalie.
Who, Ryan Miller?
Yeah, that's part of it.
American hero.
He's an American hero. He's our generation's Jim Craig, almost. He's almost Jim Craig. And then finally, Penn's Lightning, which I mean, I just think like at this Crosby story, if you had LeBron James basically miss 3 months or however long it's been with a concussion, I feel like ESPN would create a show to monitor this story. Here's Crosby, who's having not only the best season of his career, but statistically it really was up there. Like the pace that he was on, points per game, versus, how many points people score in a game now versus what Gretzky, when he had his famous, 212? There's just more scoring back then. He gets derailed, still not back yet. This feels like it should be even a bigger disaster than maybe people are talking about.
All I can think about right now is LeBron telling Jim Gray he's going to take his talents to go see a neurologist. That's
right.
Your, comparison. But
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, it may be something that was sort of contained within hockey circles, but I mean, Sidney's injury did change life. I mean, Sidney's injury, the concussion, really, really sparked the head injury debate even more than the Chara hit did. I mean, it's something that has had the NHL and other levels of hockey kind of reevaluating whether or not there should be hits to the head at all. And his injury restarted that debate in a major way. So it did have a really seismic impact. But as far as the series go, I mean, I think in our hearts we all wish that Sid could get healthy and kind of Willis Reed as well way back into the series later in the run. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. The Lightning are stacked offensively. They got Dwayne Rolison, who's a proven playoff goalie. The thing that I can't figure out, though, is, we've all underestimated the Penguins the entire second half of the season with Sidney and Evgeny Malkin out of the lineup, and all they did was, get home ice in the first round, and they keep winning and getting goals out of weird places and getting great goaltending and playing great defense. And I feel like this is another one of those situations where they're being underestimated, and they could easily just win this series in advance with the promise that maybe Sid comes back in the second round. And
for the NHL, a disaster for a variety of reasons, but I think, the one that maybe because people are so focused on can Crosby come back, concussions, all that stuff, but this Penguins team had so much momentum after 24/7 with casual fans.
Excellent point, for sure. And
the Malkin Crosby and even the little stuff in that show, like Malkin wanting to go last and Crosby being a little bummed out about it, and I felt like I knew that team, and I would have been interested in how they did every game because of those two guys and a couple other people. And the one guy who I think really, really benefited from that show and is still kind of a story is Dan Bilesma, their coach. I think maybe it was the juxtaposition between him being in the locker room as the studious sort of accountant-looking guy, while Chris Farley was in the other locker room coaching the Capitals. But he really came out of that with an air of respect, and I do believe that partially because of that show, but also mostly because of what they've been able to do without Sidney, he's going to win Coach of the Year. So the NHL's dream scenario, because they're getting a new TV contract soon, and everybody's going to be writing about, here comes the NHL. There might be an NBA lockout next year. NHL's never been stronger, all that stuff. Their dream scenario is, as far as I can tell, looking at this as casual hockey fan guy who only watches Bruins games, Penguins with Sid the Kid coming back, Willis Reed-esque, he's back, he's playing well again, it becomes this big story. How is he? How's his head? All that stuff. Everybody's talking about that. but I can't figure out who would be the best story out of the West. I feel like it would be the Canucks, and you say no.
I say no just because of the rating situation and because there might be a level of apathy towards that team from the casual fan because, like you said, they just simply don't know enough about it because they've not been exposed to it. No, if you're playing Vince McMahon here, and on one side of the ring you've got Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins, then the heel in this has got to be the Detroit Red Wings, the rubber match. It's the rubber match, and Detroit took one, Pittsburgh took another. And if you had a third matchup between a resurgent Penguins team with a healthy Crosby and a Detroit Red Wings team that clearly, with the age of Nick Lidstrom and some of those other guys, is towards the end of the dynasty. I mean, you've booked yourself John Cena and The Rock at the next WrestleMania is what you've booked yourself. I mean, that's what you've got. So to answer your question, that I think would be the dream scenario if Crosby was healthy. If he's not, then I really do believe that the most intriguing matchup on the table, considering the fact that Chicago won last year, would be to have Detroit and Boston in the final. Boston with the drought, Detroit with the last hurrah, and obviously a nationwide fan base. That might be the sexiest matchup.
And Bruins-Canucks would be interesting just because of Canucks never won. Bruins haven't won since 72.
Right.
Long-suffering fans. The Bruins, nobody wants to hear about Boston suffering because we won so many titles, but the Bruins fans really have suffered.
Yeah, for sure. And if you want to talk about that kind of thing, I mean, Washington's another team that's never won.
Yep.
And having Ovechkin in the final would be intriguing. San Jose is a team that's never won, and it would be trying to shed the choker label.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be talking secondary to having any kind of an original six team in there. But clearly those would be intriguing matchups as well. But no, I think if Boston and Vancouver played, and they're actually that's my Cup final. I have Boston and Vancouver in the final.
Thank you.
Clearly they'd be playing for the soul of Cam Neely. Neely came up with Vancouver. Was
Barry Peterson.
What?
We traded Barry Peterson for him.
That's right. Traded. And then came to Boston, and then became Cam Neely. So I think I think what should happen, much like I always envisioned a Jets-Giants Super Bowl being for the name on the front of the stadium, I think a Vancouver-Boston series would be like Boston puts up the soul of Cam Neely. Whoever wins gets to claim him, and then Vancouver puts up like 3 tons of weed. Maybe would be the other aspect of the bet.
Don't forget Vancouver-born Milan Lucic.
Oh, that's true.
I can never say his name, and he's like one of our best players. I have a speech.
Vancouver Giants star as well. Back in his junior
we
years.
do have a weird Vancouver.
I sound like a Canadian. I just quoted his junior team to you.
Who no longer fights that much, which I'm fine with.
I think that's fine. Yeah, I don't know. Like I think he's established himself as being that kind of player to the point where he doesn't necessarily have to do it all that much anymore. But yeah, I think, like most people, I see him as an heir apparent to like the mantle of Neely, like the guy who scores and leads and fights and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't want to see him, forget about that aspect of his game. In Puck Daddy world, he's a beloved figure, sir. I will say that about Milan Lucic.
Well, you can reach a point, and this is tragic, and it happened a little bit with Neely too, when you become so valuable as a scorer that you can't be throwing hands 20, 25 times a year.
Well,
potentially
that's true,
breaking
but at
it
the same
on the
time,
helmet.
then you got a guy like Jerome McGinley out in Calgary who continues to do it to make a point. Like he doesn't do it with frequency, but he does it to make a point. So maybe that's where we're getting with Lucic, is that he'll drop gloves when it's absolutely essential. He knows it's like a Chuck Norris movie. He knows his hands are weapons.
Yep.
And he will only use them to defend the honor of others.
Well, I have noticed that other teams this season have tried to goad him a little bit. And that's when you get to that final step, like, teams are trying to get you off the ice, basically. That's when you know you got something. All right, Greg.
I have to say I'm impressed that you're such a Lucic fan, because I've always felt he had a striking resemblance to Andy Pettitte.
No, I don't care. I like this Bruins team. My favorite guy is Thornton, though. And he got, like, basically maimed. I don't know if you followed that story.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It was horrible. And
horrible. But he's a hockey player, so
it's hockey. You come right back.
Back. Exactly. No, your point about this Bruins team, I think, is correct. Like, for all of the bad vibes that surrounded the Chara hit, I find them to be an appealing team. I like the fact that they rescued Nathan Horton from Florida, and I think there's a lot of likable guys in this team. And then the most likable guy, maybe in hockey, is between the pipes. I mean, Tim Thomas is like Harris from Major League, right? He's just kind of spitting tape and put together, and he's been a journeyman a bit, and now he's kind of, he was like one skate out the door last summer, and then lo and behold, he comes back and he's probably going to win the Vezina. So I find the Tim Thomas fable to be one of the better ones in hockey, and I think there's a lot of people that kind of agree with that.
And then the other thing that was interesting about the Bruins is just Tyler Seguin, just kind of watching him. I don't think they expected him to play as much, but once Savard, it became clear that he wasn't going to come back. It's been interesting to watch him, too. And he's not your typical guy that goes over huge in Boston because he's not really a fighter banger guy, but he's getting better, I feel like.
For sure. And I think at the end of the day there probably was a strong reason to not have him on the pro roster this year, but it's good that he's there, and it'll be interesting to see. If this playoff run happens for them, it's going to be great for his career. He's going to get experience that's just going to be fantastic for him.
Greg Wyshynski, your blog's excellent. You do a really good job of it, the Puck Daddy blog. I know every hockey fan knows about it, but if you're a casual hockey fan looking for something to read, I really think you guys do a good job. You put up a lot of content, too.
No, I appreciate that. It's a joy to do the blog. We got a cool audience, and there's always something to talk about. I'm going to shock them on this show. I always figured if you and I were talking hockey, it would be me, you, and Melrose at a pub outside of the Garden. But
maybe that'll happen someday. We'll put on mullets and we can talk to him. Come back for the second round, and we can break that one down.
Would love to.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.